אוקיי, בשעה טובה. פרק ג', פסוק ג'. חסד ואמת, אל יעזבוך. The chesed and emet, so whatever we understand chesed means and emet means, right? Kindness, the truth, al ya'azvucha, should never leave you. Kasherem al gargerotecha, bind them, tie them to your to your throat. Cut them al luach libecha, and write them on the tablet of your heart. So the Gaon explains and says the following. So what's the difference between Hesed and Emet? What is the definition of Hesed? Listen to the words. Hesed nikra ma she'en ha'adam mechuyav liten lehavero. The definition of Hesed is when you give someone what you're not obligated to give to that person. So when you do something, when you do an action for someone that you are not obligated to do, that's called chesed. Andy, you remember at the end of the Perek Bet, we spoke about the definition of a tzaddik. Nachon? At the end, Pasuk Chaf, ve'ochot tzaddikim tishmor. The definition also of a tzaddik is someone that does for someone else, not only something that he's not obligated to do, but even something that the person seems not to be worthy of getting. And he brought the Gemara in Baba Mitzia Pegimel about Rabbi Hanan and the case of that he what was the word? The English word? He commissioned two poor people to transport barrels of wine. They broke the barrels of wine. He took their clothes, right? And he was they spoke to Rav. And Rav say, not only that you have to give them back their clothing because they are poor, and he says, and you have to do the right thing, but you also, since you are a tzaddik, you have to pay their wages, even though they did not deliver the wine and they broke the barrels. Right? So we see that there is a dimension of behavior that goes beyond the logic of normality in a social relationship between people. So the chesed essentially is when you do something you're not obligated to do, but you do it. Emet, says the Gaon, returning a favor. Somebody does good to you, you have to do good. Somebody helped you, you have to help. Al-pidin, right? Logic imposes that you behave in kindness the same way the person was saying. It's called hakarat hatov, lehakir tova. So that's not, there's nothing great there. Lehakir tova, to do good to someone that did good to you, זה בדרך הדין. So the Gaon has a question on this pasuk. He says, Chesed ve'emet al ya'azvucha, right? The Chesed and the Emet should not leave you. So I don't understand. Once you have Chesed, there's no room for Emet. Nachon? If you're Baal Chesed and he tells you Chesed al ta'azov, do not leave the Chesed, then it's obvious that you'll do Emet, that you'll have within the Chesed the behavior of Emet. Now he said we have a problem. Why? Because what does the pasuk say? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals the Yud Gimel Midot HaRachamim to Moshe Rabbeinu, which we are saying every morning in Selichot, Hashem, Kel Rachum veChanun, Erech Apayim veRav Chesed veEmet.
Oh.
So here, now the gun is stuck because according to his logic, also you don't need the word the attribute of Emet when you say that he's Rav Chesed. So he says like this, there's a difference. Chesed, the definition of Chesed is when you do good to someone, not in quantity, but in quality. The definition of Chesed is understanding what the person needs and tailor-make it so that the person can actually be helped and benefit. It has nothing to do with quantity. And more so, the nature is when you do Chesed, it's limited. Nature of Chesed is limited. Why? Because subconsciously, you know it's Chesed. You know you're doing something you're not supposed to do, right? So you're not going to go and exaggerate in how much you're doing. So naturally, the psychology of doing Chesed is that, look, I gave you, you don't deserve it. Say thank you. Right now I have to do everything for you. Right? It's not enough that I go out of my way. On top of that, you want, I did Chesed. That's the psychology behind a human the behavior of a person when he's doing Chesed. So essentially, when a person is about to do Chesed, he is limited. He knows that there's a hard stop at some point, sometime. You said that? So because of that, we, in order to implement properly Chesed, we shift from the focus of quantity and we focus on quality. Because once you focus on quality, you are actually focusing on the real need of the person. And באמת נכון, יכול להיות that it's a little bit, יכול להיות it's a little bit more, maybe it's a lot. But once you focus on the quality, the quantity becomes secondary and almost irrelevant. That's how you bypass your emotional blockage and to a certain extent, even selfishness of limitation when it comes to Chesed. You understand?
That last sentence, the emotional blockage, can you just repeat that?
Yes. So, like we said, psychologically, when a person is about to do Chesed, he knows that he's doing something that he's not supposed to, right? So that behavior presets a limit in how much the person is willing to go out of his way and do something he's not supposed to do. So in order to bypass that behavior, we focus instead of quantity on quality. And if you focus on quality, the quantity becomes a secondary. Your chesed, your action is no longer driven by a quantity that essentially has to be limited because you're doing something that you're not supposed to do. So by focusing on quality, you allow quantity that comes secondary to be more than essentially or less, but it's irrelevant. It does not limit you anymore. Now, when it comes to emet, when it comes to din, there is really no, you don't limit yourself. You give what you're supposed to, right? Somebody did some, it's like, there is like a thing when you're in a simha, well, they say, what did he give? Okay, so we give the same, right? This guy came to this wedding, he gave $1,000, right? So we go to the wedding, okay, he gave 1,000, I'm going to give back 10,000. I cannot give less, it's not nice. Right? Why should I give more? He gave 1,000, right? So the din does not limit you. It's limited by definition. So it can be a lot, or it can, right? The measure of the emet is defined by the good that you have to reciprocate. A little or a lot, it's irrelevant. And if you don't do what was done to you, that you're kfui tova, right? Which is one of the worst midot that HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot tolerate. It's kfui tova, somebody that doesn't know how to recognize and appreciate the good that's done to him. And when the emet is not determined and fixed, and I give an example, he brings an example, a father and a son, right? The father wants to give to his son. He wants to build his son. He wants to invest in his son, correct? That's emet. Now, is there a limit to how much the father can give his son? There's no limit. As much as he can give, he will give. Now, we're not saying to spoil. We're not talking in materialism. As much time as he needs, chokhmah as he needs, education, emotional support. There's no limit to how much you give to people that you love, right? And that's emet. That's emet. That's not chesed. You don't do chesed by giving your son chokhmah. You love him. You want to do what's right, so you do it. Nachon? So in that circumstance, you see that the emet can be abundant. So in the definition of emet, that lechaora is something that is so specific and so determined and defined, you can see that there are situations where the emet will make a person do something much more than I don't want to say what is expected because there's no expectation, but then he would do to somebody else. And that's again, and this is not chesed. This is alpi midat emet. The alpi midat emet, you have the emet is that you have to take care of your wife, you have to love your wife, you have to cherish your wife. There's no limitation to how much you can give her. You don't limit yourself, but you're not doing chesed. So says the Gaon, when Shlomo HaMelech says Chesed ve'emet al ya'azvucha, to come and answer his question, he says like this: in your interaction with the person, always be on the Chesed side. Always be on the Chesed side. So your Chesed, if it's pure Chesed and true Chesed, will be focused on the quality of attention and effort you will give to that person. But that does not limit you at this point to also be ish emet and give. When are you limited? When it's only emet, or when it's not the proper chesed? You understand? Here there's a huge chidush when it comes to the definition of chesed, right? It's the bypass of the limitation of the nefesh, like we said, by focusing on quality and not quantity. So you can do chesed, and that should be the way you look at life, and that's how we start chesed, and then you can implement the emet b'matana meruba. So he says this is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he reveals his attributes of Yud Gimel Midot HaRachamim to Moshe Rabbeinu, says V'rav Chesed ve'emet. This is not, he says the Chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not like our Chesed. For us to do Chesed, we have to go out of our nature. We have to be understanding the person and his needs, and do the chesed. All that, as much as we want, since it's tailor-made to the person's need, to a certain extent, has its limits. It's no longer coming from limits within me, but it's the limits of the chesed that is needed. So I've opened up myself to do the best possible to help the person, and the need of the person will determine how much, what needs to be done. So his needs are limited, but I'm no longer limited. V'rav Chesed, says the Gaon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he does Chesed, he does Rav Chesed, he does a lot of Chesed. His ability, we cannot say his ability, but when HaKadosh Baruch Hu does Chesed, he goes beyond what is actually needed. He will do much more than that, projecting the future of the person and his need down the future. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give a person certain things that we don't understand today, that seems sometimes too much, or even sometimes painful. But down the road, we understand how Rav Chesed this was. So the Rav Chesed, that's the beginning. The Emet, and on top of that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make sure that he pays back to a man all the good that the man did for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, that's Ben Adam LaChavero. How do you implement that Ben Adam LaMakom? How do you do Chesed ve'emet with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Chesed, says the Gaon, is when you teach others. When you take the time to teach people, and not just teach them what you think you like, but teach them in a way that they understand in their safa and things that enter their heart, right? And emet is you learning.
So now we have Hesed and Emet. You are doing
sorry.
Hesed and we're doing Emet.
Now, why is Lilmod learning emet? A person learns on his own. Why is he emet? Because he has no obligation to learn. So that's emet. So he has to learn.
But he has obligation to learn.
Nachon, that's emet. That's the point.
It's not a decision.
It's not. He doesn't go out of his way for others. He is obligated to learn. So that's emet. That's emet. He says, well, that's our. Why did we come to this world? To learn Torah, to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like Chazal say, אם למדת תורה הרבה, אל תחזיק טובה לעצמך, כי לכך נוצרת, right? If you learn a lot of Torah, don't tap yourself on the back and say, wow, I made a great accomplishment. That's why you came to this world. Another hidush, which is beautiful, about chesed and emet. Chesed, he says, the definition of chesed is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to man and can no longer do himself. Listen to it. This needs digestion. The words of the Gaon. Chesed hu ma she'en beyad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Shenatan beyad ha'adam. He gave it to men. כמו שאמרו, הכל בידי שמיים חוץ מיראת שמיים. What does that mean? מה הקשר now between יראת שמיים and chesed? Let's think for a second. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to be in control of everything, of everyone, he would have carefully nurtured everyone individually. And everybody would have known that it's coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nachon? He would have gave us the chokhmah. He would have gave us the health. He would have gave us the food himself. The man came down. He opened he gave us nevuah, parnasa. Everything would have come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we wouldn't know that it's coming from him. But what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Instead, he created an ecosystem, a world of interaction between individuals, and turned us, men, into shelichim, into messengers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to implement his will and what he's expecting us to do for him, such as tzedakah, maaser, leket, pe'ah, shichecha, ve'ahavta et hager. עזוב תעזוב עמו. All the laws בין אדם לחברו. All the הלכות בין אדם לחברו. All the חסד בין אדם לחברו. ללמוד וללמד. הקדוש ברוך הוא gave us, meaning he took that כוח הנתינה, he took that power of giving and handed it over to humanity. Hand it over to Am Yisrael. Which means that when you do chesed, you didn't do anything good to yourself. All you did is respecting the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that chose you, amongst many others, to do what he wanted to do himself, but chose to give it to humanity. Now, what does that have to do with Yirat Shamayim? It's very simple. Because if you don't do it, that means you don't fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his Torah and his will and his power and the purpose he created the world. Olam Chesed Yibane. HaKadosh Baruch Hu built a world of Chesed that is built on Chesed. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in itself is in itself Chesed. So that changes the entire outlook and emotional reaction someone should have when he does Chesed. When you do Chesed, when I do Chesed, I feel good. This guy doesn't deserve it. I did it for him. Asiti tov. Ani tov. I'm a good man. I'm on a high. Comes the guy and say, hey, come down. All you're doing is serving your purpose while you're on this world. And you're only an extension of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects from you to do. So you're only doing what you're supposed to. And if you don't do chesed, guess what? You're not fulfilling the purpose. You're not here for the right reasons. Ve'emet, says the Gaon, hem hadevarim beyad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The emet comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The emet is the what HaKadosh Baruch Hu imposes, his judgment, his gezerot, his laws. This is emet. This is in his hand. Al ya'azvucha. So now we know that chesed and emet both are ben adam lachaveru and ben adam lamakom. Nachon? We explained chesed ve'emet both ben adam lachaveru, and then we explain chesed ve'emet ben adam lamakom. So it's multi-dimensional. אל יעזבוך, כלומר שיהיו תמיד בידך שתעשה, וזהו במעשה. The emet and the chesed are not concepts that are theoretical, philosophical, and ideal. These are concepts that belong in the world of actions. Chesed is not just something you want or you feel like doing. The definition of chesed is actions, practical actions. Kasherem al gargerotecha, right? Tie them to your throat. He says the Gaon, what dibur sheyihu beficha tamid. Speak about it. Speak about emet. Speak about chesed, because it stimulates you to do more. When you talk about it, you're also responsible to do, right? Baruch Omer ve'oseh. When we say something, we don't want to say something and do something else. So you set yourself for success. כתבם על לוחות ליבך, write them on the tablet of your heart, במחשבה, think about it. Like the pasuk says, שיהיו בפיך ובלבביך לעשותו. And this is how you triangulate chesed ve'emet in the three olamot that you impact. The olam ha'ma'aseh, the world of action. The olam hadibur, the world of speech. And the olam ha'mahshava, the world of thoughts, which are the three worlds, asiyah, yetzirah, and bri'ah. Bri'ah, the world of mahshava. Yetzirah, the world of speech. And asiyah, the world of action. So the action, the dibur and the mahshava, says Shlomo HaMelech, should be infused all the time with thoughts and actions of emet and chesed. Ben adam lachavero u ben adam lamakom. And I have to finish this. We have to finish one more pasuk because it's connected. Sahen v'sechel tov be'enei Elokim ve'adam. The pasuk we all know. The benefits, says the Gaon, of what we have just learned, and the pasukim we've learned in the pasuk Aleph and Bet. Sahen, and you will find grace, favor, you will find favor. V'sechel tov, and your words will be accepted. B'nei Elokim ve'adam, in the eyes of Hashem and in the eyes of men. Hen, says the Gaon, and that says milashon hinam. Hen comes from the word hinam. That's why it says mitziat hen. What do we say mitziat hen? You find hen. We should find favor, right? What you find usually is free. We're good? ושכל טוב, שכל, says the Gaon, זה הצלחה שיצליח דרכיך. You will find favor, meaning you will realize that people like you, respect you, accept what you say without pure logic. Well, you could say certain things and they make sense, but that doesn't mean that people will like you and will favor you. So the aura, and this is what Moshe Rabbeinu prayed, right? To have hen in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The aura, the energetic aura that you create around you by developing the chesed and the emet, shines a light upon you that translates into a behavior of people to find favor in your eyes, to find favor in their eyes, mechila. And the result of that is that you see hatzlaha, you see that you have success in the path that you take. And he says, now, how does that work? How does the hatzlacha and the chen work compared to the chesed and the emet? He says, very simple. Chesed you do and you're not supposed to, right? So there's no real logic to it. It's also for free. When you do chesed, you do something That is, you do it for free for the good, for the greater good. So the midah keneged midah is the greater good, is that the person favors you for no real reason. The emet is the yosher, right? Is what that is if you do what you're supposed to do, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu make sure that you see direct result to your effort. That's the atzlacha. So the emet triggers atzlacha. The chesed triggers chen. And since we said that chesed and emet is ben adam lamakom and ben adam lachavero, the pasuk says ben elokim ve'adam. So we have to do chen and chesed with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to find favor and have atzlacha coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our limud Torah, in all the mitzvot that we do, in the limud that in teaching others, right? How when you have atzlacha in teaching others, is because why? Is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the bracha for the emet that you did to him. You understand? So again, the emet triggers the atzlacha. When you're emet, you will see success. It's midah keneged midah. You do your emet with ben adam lachavero, you will have atzlacha ben adam lachavero. You will have success. You do chesed with ben adam lachavero, you will find favor in their eyes. And the same thing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is an incredible secret segula that the Gaon gives us. כמובן, it's שלמה המלך, חכם מכל אדם. Any questions?
Chesed is not, we are not also obliged to do chesed?
No, to be obliged to do chesed is because it's the foundation of the world. But what does it mean to do chesed? To do chesed is an outlook, right? It's a trait. But actually, the definition of chesed is to do something that is not that you're not obligated to do to that person. You're obligated to do chesed because you're created in a world of chesed. But to that person, you're not obligated. חזק מאוד, חזק מאוד, חזק מאוד. שלמה המלך עליו השלום gave us the segula for הצלחה. You want success. By the way, this applies across the board in our life, right? In every aspect of our life. You want הצלחה, תהיה אמת. In whatever you do, in business, in a relationship, in any endeavor that you do. If you're emet, you will find favor. You have atzlacha. You do chesed, you will have beracha. You will find chen. Now, to turn ourselves into machines, engines of chesed and emet, do, speak, and think about it all the time. So when you learn Torah, have the kavanah, I am mekayem now, the midat ha'emet with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you teach Torah, you say, Leshem yechud kudsha berichu shchinte, right? Right now, I'm mekayem chesed ben adam lamakom. It's another layer of kavanah we should have in our actions in order to awake the beracha that hides inside that effort and that action. Then it goes back to the Hidush I told you on Friday, right? With Ahavat Hashem and Yirat Hashem in every mitzvah that you do. Tov. Any question? We'll stop here for the pasuk. So we finished pasuk hey, right? Okay, the next pasuk is pasuk vav. No, sorry, mechila. We did pasuk gimel and dalet. Next pasuk is pasuk hey. בטח אל השם בכל ליבך ואל בינתך אל תישען. Another, this is fantastic. So this is for Shlomo HaMelech. I'll tell you the Hidush. I don't know if Andy, I don't know if I understand it. I know you have a course, so I don't want to, hold you back.
Love you, Rav.
בהצלחה בעזרת השם. You'll hear the Hidush. I'll tell you the Hidush offline. But listen to this, Andy. The Torah tells us in last week's parasha about Amalek. What is the rebuke of Amalek from the Torah? Velo yare Elokim. Right? Velo yare Elokim. Rashi says, who's Velo yare Elokim? Who's not fearing God? Amalek. So the question that is asked is, how can we rebuke Amalek of not being Yareh Elokim, when essentially when we go back to Avraham Avinu and he does the Akedat Yitzchak, right? The 10th test is at the peak of the challenges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him in his life, all his life. He's 100 years old. What does the pasuk say after he does Akedat Yitzchak? Ata yadati ki Yareh Elokim ata. Now I know that you are Yareh Elokim. So we're comparing Amalek to Avraham, and we're telling Amalek, Velo Yareh Elokim, why aren't you like Avraham Avinu? That's the question. So in order to answer this question, we're going to ask another question. The Torah puts an emphasis and a big effort, a big dagesh on emotions. Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha leman tiraoto, you should fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Ve'samachta bechagecha tachad lo ahavta et Hashem toch simcha ve'tuv lev, right? So we see that there is a real dimension of emotions in the Avodat Hashem. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Emotions are instincts, right? We've learned that many, many times. Nachon, Andy? People are wired different. Nachon? Some people are more emotional than others. Some people can trigger an emotion better than others. So someone that doesn't do any effort but feels an emotion, he's mekayim the mitzvah, and the one that puts a lot of effort and that cannot trigger him an emotion, he doesn't make the mitzvah. Somebody that has the ability to emotionally, physically, and emotionally to feel ahavat Hashem. Somebody doesn't feel it. He says, I don't feel it. What do you want? I don't feel it. So this guy make a mitzvah, this guy doesn't make a mitzvah. But the emotion, we know from the Rambam, is an instinctive reaction to a situation, right? It's from the koach hamitorer, from the instinct. So how does that work? So Rabbi Rucham Alevi Zer Tzadik Kadosh Livracha, he answers something nifla. He says in Achinami, there's no mitzvah that is the actual emotion. That's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the effort to get to that emotion. So a person that does an effort to feel ahava, even though he didn't feel the ahava, he gets the mitzvah of the ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. The person that does an effort to have yirat Hashem, even though he doesn't feel the fear, he gets the mitzvah of yirat Hashem. On the other hand, you have people that feel and they don't do anything, they're not getting the mitzvah. The definition of the mitzvot that are related to emotions are not based on the actual emotion, but on the effort to get to that emotion. If that's the case, now we understand, we can answer the question about Amalek. What's the question of Amalek? Is what Amalek never did one effort to have Yirat Hashem, Yireh Elokim. That's the problem. It's not that we're not comparing it to Avraham Avinu. We're telling him nothing. You're not doing anything. And the opposite. Look at Rashi there. The opposite. All you do is fight the Bnei Israel. You fight HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now that answers the question on Amalek. But there's a beautiful hidush that comes out of this. And that's related to the hidush we just said now in Mishlei. Every mitzvah that we do, we put tefillin, we eat matzah, we pray, we're going to be menaneh alulav, we listen to the shofar. All these mitzvot are or to fear Hashem or to get closer to Hashem. This is my way to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is to apply, to do the Torah. How do I fear Hashem? By learning the Torah, by fearing and getting to know Him more. So every time you do a mitzvah, there is a layer in it, because it's an effort, right? So that effort has in it a mitzvah of ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha leman tirot, and of fearing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So every time you do a mitzvah, you do 3 mitzvot. You do the actual mitzvah, and you're mekayem the mitzvah of ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, to love Hashem and to fear Hashem. So when we do mitzvot, we have to have the kavanah of those mitzvot also. Yes, it's true. Now I'm about to be mekayem the mitzvah of leaniach tefillin, but I'm also about to be mekayem the mitzvah of ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha and of yirat Hashem. And that is, I believe, a tremendous segula to awake ahavat Hashem and to awake yirat Hashem. That's the hidush.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. We're back.
Baruch Hashem.
See you
Tov.
tomorrow.
Be'ezrat Hashem.